Alright, in the last couple videos we got our objects set up, and I've started making adjustments from the little class generator I created this morning. I also closed the UML diagram and exported that into a non-editable feature to look at. That way I don't change my mind suddenly while typing. I've already put like a week and a half. I've already put quite a bit of time into thinking that through to get, and a lot of brainstorming and refinement to get to that final version, so it shouldn't need edited on the fly now. So I have a non-editable version of that to look at. Next time we're going to look at that. So we're able to load our spreadsheet, render at least a single image, which will work for our background. So in order to test the background, the only thing we need to do is go ahead and fill out this lay tile methods, and then we should be able to replace what's in our original test with that. Oh, I also changed the style. If you're not familiar with that, in Notepad++, you can go settings, style configurator, choose one, and then kind of pick what language you're working with. Where are we at? We're in Python. And then set all the colors up for that. But I just went ahead and changed that because there was something. Oh yeah, comments and strings were the same color. So I just found that changed that to something that's not going to be so bad. Hopefully it still shows on the video. If it doesn't show on the video very well, I'll remake this video. But and change it for future videos. But I'll find something with a dark background and all the colors standing out. So now our lay tile method, so that we can go ahead and give the background a test. So lay tile, and we need to take in a little bit more than that. Because in order to lay our tiles, if we look over here at our earlier version, this is where we kind of got that part replaced with an object. But we have this for loop. So along with our counter, we need those positions and the size. So, and these numbers, 768 and 512, that were just typed into the test, came from the size of our display, which I'm going to rename that as game when we get back over here. So, back over here, along with the self, we want to pass in a game object so we can get that size. And then we also need a scene width and a scene height. Actually, I don't think I need the game object. What was I thinking there? Let me pause the video while I rethink what I thought through right before starting. Oh yes, I remember. We do need the game object passed in because our render object needs the game. So we have to pass the display back on up to the render object. Got a little confused when I was typing that. That happens sometimes when we're coding. So now just that loop that we have over on the other side. So from range, from 0 to our scene width, which we will pass in, and our step size, well, on this tile, for our test, we know it's 64 by 64, but we don't always know that. But we do have the width should be set, so we should be able to have the width based off the image. So then we can just call self.get width for our step size. And then for j in range, going from 0 up to the scene height, if I can spell it correctly, and our step size will be self.get height. Because we're going to pass in the scene width and the scene height, and then our object has a get width and get height method based off the size of the image. And then on each time through, we're going to call the render method, which needs a game object, an X, and a Y position. So that's why the game object needed passed in. I forgot why it needed passed in at one point. So we'll call self.render at pass in that game object, whatever I is and whatever j is to get those coordinates, and then that should render our object. So I think we're ready to go over here and give this a first test and look for typos, because I was talking the whole time I made typos, but hopefully that logic made sense. So we generated all our getters and setters and then modified that script I wrote to do that to give us some default values. Instead of loading in a string, we use that string to load in a bunch of PyGame surfaces. Then calculate the width and the height, and render our object, and got some more methods coming soon. So our background object, which is going to be the ground in this case, we'll call that parent that does all that stuff, and then do this. Oh, I guess do need in here an if statement because we have this background mode. So if self dot underscore underscore bt mode is equal to tile, that's when we want to do all this stuff. So we're only going to do this if we specifically state that it is a tiled image. So let's go give that ground a test. So we come back over to our test game. Let's see, we should be able to comment some stuff out. Won't need a ground sprite. Won't need this method that just blitz the sprite on the screen, and we won't need this loop. And we're going to replace that. Instead of a ground sprite, we'll have a ground object. Ground equals a background 2D, which is that one we just created, which if you're creating them, you might want to use names that you recognize. You know, I chose this name because it makes the most sense to me. And what do we need here? An X and a Y and a I'll ignore that part because 0, 0 is a good default for our tile background. We'll need a sprite image, and background mode tile by default will be okay, so we just need to pass in the image. So sprite equals as an array, this one right here, images.grass.ping. I'll copy that. That'll be the single element in this array, which gives us our object and all the stuff that we need about that object. Which means now, instead of calling that right here, we can just call the method from that object. Ground.layTiles, and we need to pass in our game object, which I want to rename. I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to come up to the top, hit Control H, and look for scene, and I'm going to call it game, which is trivial at this point, but later I'm going to create a scene object so that we can choose which scene play. We'll load our objects into a scene object, and then our main loop will decide which scene plays. But I'm going to go ahead and rename this now. So find next is the declaration there, so replace that. Yep, replace that one. That's commented out, so that won't hurt anything. Oh, so that's all of them. So our display object is now called game, which makes more sense. And then we'll put several scenes inside of the game. And then we need an X and Y, which at this point are still just typed in. We'll have an object to grab those from later, but for now just typing those in. And instead of a bunch of functions to do it, we actually have an object with everything encapsulated. So, ready to give this a test. Python test2.py. Background 2D is not defined. Oh, that's right. I forgot one of the most important parts, we created this gameObjects.py as a module. We need to import that. Import gameObjects. And now let's give it a test. So in their message I see 4, but the keyword 4, but there's not a colon at the end of the line. What line was that on? 74. So on gameObjects, line 74. Oh, already right there. Stick the colon in and try that again. Oh, it got a little bit further. Background 2D is not defined. Oh, that's not how I meant to import that. Sorry, I went over and looked through it, and since it's not defined, which is why we imported it, but this means we would have to type gameObjects.background2D. So I meant to do the from. So from gameObjects, import everything. Now we'll give that a try. So the standard debugging, just keep trying things until it works. Oh, line 45 in Sprite Sheet, where we load that in, over in gameObjects, we forgot to import PyGame. So come all the way up to the top here, import PyGame. The normal debugging steps. Come over here, give this another try. Play tiles should be defined. Where was that at? Oh, there it is. Missed an S. All the normal little mistakes that happen. Just gotta check those. Oh, there we go. And those, it looks like our laying tiles works exactly like it did before. So that's kind of a good start. That image, something looks off with that image. I'll figure out what's going on there for a moment, or in a moment. But we can see the laying tiles work. So next up, we need to do some stuff with the character. The same thing. Replace all of this original test script stuff about the player with a nice object that encapsulates everything we need from our player. So we'll do that in the next video. We'll see you then.